Hey everybody, Christy Birchfield here. Today we're looking at Ezekiel chapter 29. We've been seeing a lot of the judgments, and now it almost seems like God has moved to providing judgments through Ezekiel to specific people. So it's not even just about countries. Yesterday we saw the judgment to the king of Tyre. Today we're looking at judgment to the Pharaoh of Egypt. Yesterday we were talking about arrogance, and today we're talking about arrogance part 2. And so we see that the king of Tyre, while he was arrogant about, hey, I have done all of this and I'm above all of it, we see Pharaoh with an entirely different arrogance. He starts talking about, Pharaoh says, I've created the Nile and I've made this. He starts taking credit for the things that God has done. That's a different type of arrogance. And what we can see and what we can understand as we read through that chapter of God basically explaining how he's going to judge Pharaoh is that God doesn't share credit. God's jealous with regards to what he does and how he does those things. And God being creator, God creating the Nile, God creating the world, everything that we live in, God's not really going to share that glory or that credit with anybody else. So the Pharaoh of Egypt taking credit for something that is God's not going to stand for that. And God's not going to stand for that in our lives either. Are there things that God has brought into being, that God has brought into your life, that God has done that we are taking credit for? Are we taking credit for having a really great job instead of giving credit to God because he's the one that gave us the abilities, he's the one that gave us the know-how, he's the one that gave us the opportunity. He brought all of that into being. He is the one who has allowed us the opportunity to have a great job. Do we take credit for having a great family? Do we take credit for having great health, great possessions, whatever things we look at and we take credit for? Anything that we have that is good comes from God. Talks about that in James. We need to make sure that we are giving God the credit that he deserves for everything that we have in our life that is good and that glorifies him. He deserves it. He's worth it. And quite frankly, he's the one who did it in the first place. Give God the credit he's due.